The alarm on Meridian Station did not sound like alarms are supposed to sound. It was low and steady, almost gentle, and that gentleness is what made my hands shake as I ran toward the residential ring. I am Saka Vel, liaison officer of the Thren Compact, and I still remember the exact number of steps it took me to reach that corridor, because I was counting them instead of thinking about what I already knew. A child was missing. A human child. Her name was Ren Lang, and she was 7 years old. And an hour earlier she had been sitting outside the mess hall drawing pictures of the station rings with a stylus that squeaked every time she pressed too hard. I found her father first. Peter Lang was on his knees in the corridor outside the old scrubber housing, and he was not shouting. That silence frightened me more than shouting would have. He looked up at me and he did not ask for help. He asked me one question, very quietly, and I did not have an answer for it. He asked me who gave the order. I learned the answer within the hour, and so did every station officer, and so did the Compact's own internal security feed, because Overseer Bralkith did not try very hard to hide what he had done. He was a man from the old military line, the kind who had never accepted that the war with humanity ended before he got the chance to finish it the way he wanted. He believed a message needed to be sent to the new arrivals, something to remind them that the Compact still held the keys to every door on this station. He chose Ren because she was small, and because he believed smallness meant no one would answer for her. I will not describe the details of what happened in that housing unit, and I would not do it even if you asked me twice. What I will tell you is that Ren did not survive it, and that within 4 hours of the moment it happened, the entire station knew, and within 4 hours and 10 minutes, so did the rest of the galaxy. That last part was the piece none of us saw coming. Peter Lang had been a communications engineer before he retired to raise his daughter. Nobody on the station knew that he had wired a private subspace beacon into the very same scrubber housing he had come to repair, an old habit left over from a colony disaster years earlier, where he had lost friends because no one outside their sector heard the call for help in time. He swore after that day he would never again be in a place where a call could go unheard. So he built his own line out, quietly, against every station regulation, and he never told anyone, not even his wife. When he found his daughter, he did not call station security first. He sent the recording out through his own private beacon, unfiltered, uncut, to every open channel his old engineer contacts still had access to. Colonial broadcast boards, public relay networks, small community forums where retired spacers and off-duty engineers still talked to each other about nothing in particular. He sent it to strangers, because somewhere in his grief he understood something about his own people that we, with all our years of studying humanity, had never truly understood ourselves. Humans do not need an order to move. They only need to know. Command Authority Ressa tried to lock down the outbound relay the moment she learned what had happened, but she was already too late by nearly 3 hours. The recording was already gone, spreading from server to server, screen to screen, faster than any fleet order could travel. I watched the Compact engineers try to chase it and fail, and I watched Ressa's face as she understood, slowly and completely, that we no longer controlled what the rest of the galaxy was about to learn. The waiting began after that. And the waiting was the part that taught me the true shape of fear. Nothing happened on the first day. Our sensors stayed quiet. Ressa ordered defensive protocols anyway, and Bralkith, who still had not grasped the size of the mistake he had made, complained that the precautions were an insult to Compact strength. I remember looking at him during that meeting and thinking that he still believed rank could protect him from what was coming, the same way he had believed Ren's smallness would protect him from consequence. On the second day, our long-range sensors picked up the first ship. It was not a warship. It was a converted cargo hauler, old and patched, the kind of vessel used to move grain and machine parts between colony worlds, not the kind built for a fight. It came in fast and alone, 3 full days ahead of anything organized enough to be called a fleet, and it held position at the edge of the system without answering any of our hails. By the 4th day there were 11 more ships. By the 6th day there were over 40, and none of them wore a government seal. There were fishing trawlers with salvage plating welded onto their hulls. There was a university research vessel, still carrying its own professors and students, its mining lasers rebuilt in what our scans told us was less than 3 days of continuous work by people who had never built a weapon before in their lives. There were retired veterans who had once sworn, publicly and on record, that they would never fly into danger again, and ahead of all of them, still holding position alone at the edge of the system, was that first cargo hauler, unmoving, patient, waiting for the rest to catch up. I asked one of our sensor technicians how a scattered civilian population with no central command had managed to organize a response that fast. She told me something I have never forgotten. She said they did not organize. They simply all decided the same thing, individually, within hours of hearing the same recording, and then they found each other along the way. Ressa tried diplomacy the way she always did, because she believed, right up until the final hour, that words could still hold back what was coming. She hailed the lead vessel and offered the standard language: regret, an internal inquiry, appropriate sanction under compact law. There was a long silence before any answer came back, long enough that some of the younger officers began to hope the silence meant hesitation. It did not mean hesitation. When the reply finally came, it was calm, and that calm was worse than anger would have been. The voice on the other end said there would be no inquiry. It said Bralkith would walk out through the airlock and into their hands, or they would come in and take him themselves, and they would not be careful about who else was standing nearby when they did. I have negotiated with angry species before. Anger burns hot and eventually it burns itself out, and if you wait long enough you can usually find the edges of it and work around them. This was not anger. This was something colder, something that had already finished deciding the outcome and was simply informing us of the schedule. I understood then that we were not negotiating with people who wanted to be persuaded. We were negotiating with people who had already stopped needing persuasion. Bralkith, of course, tried to hide behind rank. He stood in front of the Command Council and cited 17 articles of the Interspecies Conduct Accord, word for word, in perfect order, as if law were a wall instead of a rope that only holds as long as both sides agree to hold their end of it. Ressa listened to every article without interrupting him once. Then she looked at the display still looping Peter Lang's recording, the one none of our engineers had managed to silence, and she looked at the growing formation of 40 ships that had crossed the width of known space on nothing but grief and rumor, and she made the only decision that could keep the rest of the station alive. She opened the airlock herself. I will not tell you what happened to Bralkith after the lead ship took him aboard, because I do not know, and I do not believe anyone outside that hull will ever know for certain. What I do know is that the 40 ships did not fire a single shot at Meridian Station. They did not demand territory. They did not demand payment. They did not ask the Compact to broadcast an apology to their homeworld. The man from the first cargo hauler, the one who had arrived alone 3 days ahead of everyone else, walked onto our station under his own escort and stood in the observation bay for exactly as long as it took Grace Lang, Ren's mother, to cross the room and reach him, and not 1 moment longer. Then he left, and the rest of the fleet left with him, and within a week the system was quiet again. They asked for nothing from us. That was the part that took me the longest to understand. They had not come to set a price for what happened to their child, because there is no price that could ever be set. They had come because a child of theirs had been hurt, and wherever a child of theirs is hurt, they arrive, not as an army seeking terms, but as something closer to a law of nature seeking its cause. I have served the Compact for many years. I have watched fleets broken by clever strategy, and I have watched entire worlds humbled by weapons far greater than anything Meridian Station carried. None of it frightened me the way those 40 mismatched, unarmored, hastily gathered ships did, arriving without any order to guide them, needing none, because somewhere on a quiet station a father had refused to stay silent, and an entire species had decided, separately and all at once, that silence was never going to be an option for them to begin with. We still do not fully understand humans, even after everything that happened that week, but every officer who stood on that station carries one lesson home with them, and it never leaves. Hurt one of their children, and it will not be a government that answers. It will not be a fleet command, and it will not be a formal complaint through diplomatic channels. It will be all of them, together, and they will not wait to be asked. I think about Peter Lang often, and about the beacon he built in secret because he once lost people to silence and swore he never would again. I think about Grace Lang, crossing that observation bay, to meet a stranger who had crossed the galaxy for her daughter, and asked for nothing in return, not even his name. I think about the young officer beside me who whispered, as the ships finally turned to leave, that she hoped she would never again be on the wrong side of a station when a message like that one went out. I hope the same thing. I hope it every single day. There is a lesson in this that the Compact has tried to bury in official reports and careful language, but I will say it plainly here, because I believe it deserves to be said plainly. Power is not only measured in the size of a fleet or the strength of a weapon. Sometimes it is measured in how fast ordinary people can decide, without being told, that something is worth crossing the galaxy for. Humanity taught us that lesson in the space of 1 week, and they did not need a single order to do it. Ren Lang would have been 8 years old the following season. Her mother still keeps one of her drawings, the last one she made outside the mess hall, a picture of the station rings drawn in blue and silver with a stylus that squeaked. I saw it once, framed, hanging in the small memorial garden the humans built near the observation bay, the same bay where the stranger from the cargo hauler once stood for a few quiet minutes and then walked away without asking for anything at all. I do not know his name. Nobody on the station ever learned it, and I suspect that was intentional. He was not there as a hero, and he did not want to be remembered as one. He was there because a child had been hurt, and that was reason enough. And when it was finished, he simply left the way he came, alone, unremarkable, already forgotten by history in every way, except the one that mattered. Sometimes, late in the ship's cycle when the station lights dim and the corridors go quiet, I still think I can hear that low, steady alarm from the day it all began. It never sounded like an alarm to me. It sounded like a warning that came too late for the one person it should have protected, and too early for the rest of us to understand what was coming. I have told this account many times since that week, to new officers arriving on rotation, to compact historians who wanted a cleaner version than the one I am willing to give them, and to my own children, who ask me sometimes why I go quiet whenever someone mentions humanity's fleet response protocols. I tell them all the same thing. I tell them that the galaxy is full of powerful species with greater ships and older technology and colder strategies, but very few of them can move the way humanity moved that week, all at once, without waiting for permission, simply because somewhere among them a small girl who liked to draw station rings in blue and silver was gone, and that was enough. I tell them that if they ever find themselves standing near a human child, they should remember Ren Lang, and they should remember that behind every quiet, ordinary human family is an entire species capable of crossing the width of known space in less than a week, if that family is ever wronged. And I tell them most of all, that the true strength of humanity was never in their weapons, not even in that improvised fleet of 40 ships built from grain haulers and university labs and retired veterans who thought their fighting days were behind them. The true strength was in the fact that they did not need to be ordered to come. They only needed to know. That is the story as I witnessed it, from the corridor where Peter Lang knelt in silence, to the observation bay where a stranger asked for nothing and received everything that mattered, to the quiet week after, when Meridian Station learned, all at once and completely, exactly what it means to hurt a human child. I do not tell this story for sympathy, and I do not tell it as a warning, though it may serve as both. I tell it because it happened, because I was there, and because some truths are too important to be left only to official records written by people who were never in that corridor at all. Ren Lang liked the color blue. She thought every alien she met was interesting, no matter how strange we looked to her young eyes. She squeaked her stylus against the display screen because she pressed too hard when she was excited, and she was excited often, because she was 7 years old and the galaxy still seemed like a wonderful place to her. It still is a wonderful place, mostly. But it is also a place where an entire species can answer, together and without hesitation, the moment one of their own is harmed. I know that now, and I will never forget it, and neither will anyone else who stood on that station during the week. The compact learned exactly what it means when Earth finally answers.